Hello and good day, everyone. I trust you're having a wonderful day today. In today's class, we're talking about domain 5 identity and access management. So, we are still in this domain series of CISSP domains, and in domain 5, we're looking at talking about access control, we're looking at identity verification, and then determining who controls access and what access you have and what level of access you have. So it's all about ensuring authorized users can access the resources that they need to work, and they can only access the resources in appropriate ways. All right. So it said here that IAM is like a gatekeeper of a kingdom where it's responsible for verifying the identity of everyone who tries to enter. That's through authentication, and decides, how much they have access to resources they can, have access to, and through authorization. So basically, in this domain, like we said, we are talking about verifying identities. As a cybersecurity analyst, it's very important that you work with your team to verify the identity of your users. So we'll look at the four A's in this one. We'll look at the four A's of identity and access management. So in these four A's of identity and access management, the first one we'll look at is administration. So we're looking at administration, and here we are talking about where it all begins from the admin. The admin determines the user groups. The admin determines who the user groups can be divided into different sections. So we could have a user group for the staffs of the organization. You could also have a user group for maybe the suppliers. You could even have a user group for maybe the users, general users, products, day-to-day users. So you could have different user groups, but the admin determines everything. So they determine the onboarding. Onboarding is like they bring into the organization the onboarding of the staffs and even suppliers and even the daily users of the product. So for the staffs now, as a cybersecurity analyst, you must ensure that there's a clean and complete onboarding process. Every staff is being shown, they are being verified. Number one, they are placed into the database of the HR. So most organizations use the HR system to be able to bring in new staff. So it's more like the HR do the interview for you, they employ you, and they keep you in the database as a staff. So most times the staffs are actually in the HR system. So once you come in, then you are given a proper orientation of the company, your job responsibilities and roles, and you're also given the rights and privileges to be able to carry out your role. So it's very important that every staff that is being brought in should be able to have an identity being verified, because you don't want, as a cybersecurity analyst, you don't want someone who doesn't have a very strong identity tampering with your system. And that's all where we start from. Start with administration. Administration is all determines everything. So the admin, we generally have database, and database you now have directory to group different user groups, and then that's quite important. So the administration determines what access rights that anyone has in the company, and they determine provisioning of accounts. That means creating of accounts for users, and also the provisioning, the removal of account rights and privileges, and deletion of account for users. So the next step we'll look at now is the authentication step. Authentication, that's the second A. Number two is authentication. So we call it here identification and authentication. So take this as a very, very simple example. So different companies have different ways they identify and verify their staffs. Some are, when you get to for the traditional one, you have a gateman that looks at you and knows that you're a staff, then allows you to come in. If you're not the staff, it asks you questions. Oh, who are you? who sent you, where you coming from, oh, I'm a supplier, I'm this, I'm that, no, I'm a user, I came to complain, or whatever it is. So there's probably a traditional gateman who is able to kind of verify who comes in and who goes out. Okay, there there are also companies that have these security doors that has biometrics. So you actually just go swiping your card or something like that. If your identity is real and you swipe your card, you're able to get access in. But if you don't have a real identity, then it will not give you access in. So, but in a digital world, we are looking at access in terms of maybe your login details. So you try to log in into your own maybe local area network or internet network, whatever it is. You try to log into the website of the company or thereabout. Then when you try to log in, then there's an access control. So you have to log in your username and your password, and all it's trying to do is just verify if you are really who you say you are. So authentication is based on some very important principles. And principle number one for authentication is going to ask the question, who are you? So who are you is going to be answered by three simple ways. Number one, something that you know. Number two, something that you have. And number three, something that you are. So let's look at those three things. Something you know, your knowledge base, right? Maybe your username and your password. So once the admin has created an account for you, then you're expected to remember your username and your password, so that is going to be a form to be able to log into your account. So either, there are different ways companies have their account. Some have you can log in through the internet, you just log in, and some it has to be an internet server. You log in also on network, actually internal network, not more of an external network. So each but the manner way the company actually organizes their own, the most important fact is that there's something that verifies you and gives you access. So something if you can remember your username and your password, you should be able to get access. But now that there's a security flaw if it is just a username and password that a person can use to get access into the account. That means someone who pretends to be someone else can come into the company and just or even log in if you can remember the username and password of someone. So because of the case of identity theft, it is not advisable to just use username and password, especially if a person is handling sensitive information. There should be multiple levels of authentication. That's why we have the MFA, or multi-level factor of authentication. MFA, multi-factor authentication. So that's coming to the second one, what you have, something you have. So if your knowledge is taken up by someone else, by a threat actor or the bad guys, the person can be able to log in on your behalf and commit crime or fraud. But something you have is authenticating your device. So if you actually register to a device and the device is registered, it means that that device could be able to receive authentication through codes. For example, maybe the device is a code is sent, an instant code is sent, maybe for a minute or some 35 seconds, or whatever, the 6-digit code or whatever it is, maybe by SMS or by email, to verify if you are the real person behind the device. So because it's possible that if you lose your password, you may not remember you've lost anything. But I'm so sure that if you misplace your phone, it's likely you remember you have misplaced your phone, and you're doing everything possible to be able to get your phone back. So verifying your identity through your device could also be another way to tell that you're the real person. The next is something that you have. So that's verifying through biometrics. So this one is probably verifying through your own, like your facial recognition, or verifying facial characteristics like fingerprints or facial recognition. So this is another way of verification, and that one could be very, very important, because what companies now do is they try to verify your facial identity, especially when it comes to banking apps and fintech apps, they try to make sure your facial identity matches with that one that is with the government registered ID, like maybe your BVN, your NIN. So if the face you are matches that one in your BVN, then it gives you a pass to move on. So with multi-factor authentication, you could be set to be doing security right. At least you're able to verify that this is the real person that has access. So and the person can be able to get access to the network, or get access into the system. Next is authorization. That's the third A. Number three, authorization. And that's what we're talking about, access control here. We're looking at frameworks that define how access to resources is granted. So it's very important that people have different levels of access based on their own level. An entry level staff should have a different level of access to a manager, or to maybe the CEO, or whatever is the who is the main the CISO, the Chief Information Security Officer, or whoever is in charge. So you should have different levels of access, and everybody should be given access based on a need to know basis. That means exactly what you need to know, and then what you need to have. So least privilege principle, that means exactly what you need to know, exactly what you need to have. So you shouldn't be able to add yourself to increase yourself on the access level. Once access is given, you can't increase your access, you can't increase what you can have, you can't edit some things. So different people have access based on what they can do, maybe what they can change, what they can write, and then there are also privileged access that some very privileged people in the organization have, and those access need to be protected. So it's very important that every user is given his role. So a user that is just maybe someone that uses the product on a day-to-day basis. Let's take an example of a banking app. Someone who uses the product day to day should be able to have access to his account balance, have access to other details, and be able to perform transactions like doing sending and checking balance, transferring to someone, and all of those kind of transactions could be able to be done. But the person shouldn't have the ability to be able to change his account balance, like maybe the account balance is 10,000 naira, then he wants to edit it to 30,000 naira. That shouldn't be available. So she only have the access to just read, and she didn't have access to write, to be able to edit or do all these kind of things. You can just look at it. You need to know this is it, then perform the limited level of transaction he has. He can do based on the level of privileges he's given. So that's why you see some banking houses will tell you, if you create an account with tier 1 has an access to 50,000 naira in Nigerian money. 50,000 naira. After that one, you can do tier 2 when you put your NIN and some other government registered identity, BVN. Then you can move to tier 2. Then your access is increased. Maybe you can now transfer above 20 or 50,000 naira, and maybe to maybe 200 to 300,000 naira. So you can see that access is given based on level of there are different reasons why access is given to a user. So even for a staff, there are different levels of access who can be able to edit things, who can be able to adjust things, and everyone should be able to be given his access based on the level of authority the person has, or what he has to do. So for example, also there could also be restrictions on access, in the sense that if you have an access maybe, but you could be able to be restricted on based on what you can do, and these are based on many factors. Like we said, number one, depending on the tier that you are, you're in tier 1 or tier 2, and also sometimes based on AI and machine learning can be integrated into to the device, where the AI, the machine learning, is able to study the person's behavior over a particular period of time and detect when something goes against normal proceedings, normal behavior. So that's what we call the UBA, user behavior analytics. So the machine learning is able to just detect what the transaction of the person does every day. Like someone that's been observed to do transaction of maybe transfers of maybe 2 to 3 transfers in a month of not more than 50,000 naira. All of a sudden, just does a transaction of a million or 2 million naira, and in quick succession. So that account should be put on hold and restricted till it's able to complete some other levels of authentication to verify that this person can actually do what they can do. Sometimes it can even be frequency of transactions. When a person is doing more transactions he should have been doing normally, then there can be a red flag that something is wrong. It's either someone else is in possession of that account, or some, just to verify. The person might be a real one, but let's still verify for that to see that these transactions are coming from the authorized person, because this level of transactions suggests something is wrong. Sometimes you could even have from a location that is not maybe that is restricted. Like for example, even till today in Nigeria, you could still have a restriction on PayPal. You could be able to receive money on PayPal. And you be able to receive money, but I don't think you can still be able to buy do some transaction like transfer and buy some other things generally. So because of your location, so there could be some location based restrictions. All of these are based on authorization, what you can do. So authorization answers the questions what you are allowed to do. So access control is very important, giving access to who deserves, and using the least privilege principle. That means granting access only to your minimum access required to do your job or do the function. Separation of duties is when you divide sensitive tasks among multiple individuals to prevent fraud. That one could also be very important. You separate duties and task given among different people to avoid fraud and errors. So in authorization, we could also look at privileged account management. These are users that have very high privileges, and these privileges could be maybe they are like maybe the people in charge of the database and stuff, who could be able to edit or stuff. So people with high privileges should be able to be held accountable if anything goes wrong. So if the account should be created in such a way that anyone that has a particular right or privilege should be held accountable if something goes wrong with the database. Then we could also look at some basic things like single sign-on system. This is a new it's getting evoked now. Single sign-on system, where you need to just sign in once. Once you sign in once, you can be able to have access to different accounts and in the system. So this one also works with MFA, multi-factor authentication. So once you are able to get access by verifying your identity through different means, then you should be able to have access to different levels of accounts. So the last A we discuss now is audit. So we go back and check if the 3 A's were done quite right. So we have to keep doing audit to check if the 3 A's were done fine, and then if there's any error on the way. So we still look at federated identity. Federated identity talks about you observe that when you want to create an account with maybe Facebook or probably TikTok or something like that, you can be asked that if you have an account with Facebook, or you have an account with Gmail, you could just create an account without having to create a new username and password. So that's what we talk about federated account. So an account that has already been verified and authenticated by one organization that is reputable, that account details can be transferred to other organizations. You can transfer your Facebook details into a new account to create a new account without having to start using username and password and other things again. So just to sign in with your username, sign with your Gmail, sign in with Facebook, sign in, so it will collect and fetch your details from that, and you can be able to use it. So like we said, provisioning of accounts and the provision is very important, because once someone has been given rights and privileges and access, if the person leaves for some reasons, if he's sad or he leaves with a good heart, whatever it is, the person should be able to be deprovisioned. All of the access rights should be removed at one click. So you should be able to, with one click, there should be able to be a deprovision where all the access rights are removed, so the person cannot be a threat to the company. All right, so that's much we can take. We'll move into the next one, and then join me in the next class. Thank you.